order at 9:01 a.m. on Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. Tap, tap. That's my gavel. Okay, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Give me 1 second. I have a image for us. Okay. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, and if, Chris, we could take roll call.
All right. Trish Schreiber,
Present.
Kathy Kinchlow,
Present.
Dee Brown,
Here.
Mark Hofstetler,
Here.
John Rett,
Here.
Katie Franklin,
Excused.
Katie Wright.
Excused. Thank you. Okay, so the Community Choice Schools Commission encourages the public to participate in the commission discussions and points of action. People attending online should raise their hand when asked for public comment or to ask questions of guests. Anyone wishing to participate in commission discussions or considerations of action will be recognized by the chairperson in keeping with normal board parliamentary procedure. We discourage general comment or opinions for or against the Community Choice Schools Act, and likewise, we discourage comment on the pending lawsuit. Okay, so with that said, I see we have some attendees. Is there anyone attending who would like to be recognized before we open the meeting?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item number 1. And is there a motion for the consent agenda? Anyone?
So moved, Madam Chair.
I will second that. So it has been properly moved and seconded that the commission approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say nay. Okay, the consent agenda has been passed unanimously. And is there a motion for the adoption of today's agenda?
I make a motion.
I second it.
Great. It has been properly moved and seconded that the commission approve the adoption of today's agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, today's agenda has been approved unanimously. And we're ready to move on. Okay. Okay, so I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy lives to participate in the work and discussions of the Community Choice Schools Commission, especially when the weather is so terrific. So I want to extend great appreciation to a number of groups. First, I want to thank the commission members for their active volunteer work and dedication to supporting the implementation of the Community Choice Schools Act. You have all contributed a lot of time and effort, and people from around the state have been reaching out to me, extending their gratitude for the work you all are doing. I want to thank the Community Choice Schools Commission Policymaking Subcommittee and the steering committee members. They too have contributed significant time and have shared their talents with the development of the documents that we will be reviewing today. Many of these volunteer members are from out of state, and Montana is benefiting from their willingness to share their expertise and passion. I also want to thank the National Charter School Institute for sharing their time, talent, and resources with Montana. The Institute facilitated our April meeting and helped prepare the documents included in the agenda packet, the documents that will lay the foundation for a true charter system in our state. Every charter law is different, so this is not just a matter of copy and paste, but rather it requires significant inquiry, research, and the analysis and synthesis of theory and practice. So thank you for guiding us on this journey. I'd also like to give special thanks to the Board of Public Education and their willingness to support the commission through all of this work. Not having any staff of our own, the BPE staff has been responsive to our requests, respectful of our autonomy, and generous with their experience and knowledge of Montana law, rule, and systems, ensuring that we are properly supported during this long implementation phase. And lastly, the Office of Public Instruction has also been very generous with their time and with pointing us in the right direction to find resources that we need to interpret the new law. Superintendent Ernstson frequently checks in with her appointed commission member, ensuring that John has access to state information to share with the commission. So we are truly all in this together, and the statewide and national support has been plentiful. So I want to say thank you to everyone. And to be clear, my intention for the day is for everyone to leave today's meeting feeling engaged, productive, valued, respected, and heard. And we will proceed to item number 3 on the agenda.
That's me with the fundraising committee update.
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
All right. So the fundraising committee has been meeting regularly to identify potential private organizations and foundations whose missions are aligned with our work in order to secure funding for a director's position. The director's position will likely be full-time in order to lead the development of the many systems and processes necessary for us to be ready to review applications and support systems for schools to succeed. Our fundraising goal is $300,000 to cover salary, travel expenses, and other related operational necessities for the years of 25 and 26. So if we overcome the lawsuit, then it's likely the commission will seek funding from the legislature in 2027 to continue to help fund this position, alongside the eventual authorizing fees intended to fund the choice system.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Kathy?
Madam Chair, I do. Up to this point, have we been successful in that, maybe local and national search of possible donors to the program?
Yeah, I think we're getting close. We haven't had any direct, direct conversations yet. We're still seeking to get those connections made, but I think we're on the right track. We have some good leads as far as introductions to some of the organizations and foundations. So yeah, hopefully my kind of hope here is in the next couple months, we're able to secure kind of our first, we've got some funds raised already, but hopefully in the next couple months here, we can bring in our next donor.
Well, and I think that once we start that whole process, thank you, committee, for doing that. I think others will see the value and see who is actually donating to this and jump on board. And I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
Definitely. And I just want to add to that, that in the month of June, we've set up a good number of conferences with people who are ideally going to give us leads to different foundations that are available and eager to help the chartering system, but also with some of those foundations. So we're definitely making progress in that way and hoping it'll come together soon, for sure. Thank you, Dee. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to the policymaking special committee. Dee, that's you for the update.
Thank you. The subcommittee decided it didn't need to make a rule at this time. So the committee is focusing its time on building out policy for implementation. The committee worked with the National Charter School Institute to develop an application, contract, and performance framework. These items are included in your agenda packet, and the commission will have time to comment on them certainly during the discussion today. The committee successfully met with a steering committee made up of education stakeholders in Montana, as well as national experts, mainly charter experience professionals from regional and neighboring states. The list of steering committee members is on the Board of Public Education's webpage under the under the Choice Schools tab. The recording of the meeting with the steering committee is also on the BPE webpage under that same tab. The steering committee provided a lot of feedback that was taken into consideration for the final versions of the documents in the agenda packet. The policymaking will be broken down into 4 stages. Stage 1 will be the preparation of documents for Choice Schools authorization, and that's been completed. Stage 2 is the preparation of documents for authorizers. It's like a tongue twister, you know.
I know.
Authorizers this summer of 24. Stage 3 is the development of metrics to rate all documents to guide decision-making, which will be early fall of this year, 24. Stage 4 is the internal supporting policy development in preparation to fully implement the various documents made in all stages, and that will be late in the fall of this year, 2024. And of course, we're going to have a lot of questions, and that's how we will proceed, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions right now? Okay, good. Let's move on to the treasurer report. John?
Okay, so as of 5/31/2024, we have received two donations, $25,000 from the Educational Promise Foundation and $2,500 from the Frontier Institute, making a total initial balance of $27,500, of which we have spent $363 on legal fees, and the advance in Missoula cost $4,285.13. That leaves a balance of $22,851.87 as of 5/31/2024.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair, I do.
Go ahead.
John, I'm wondering, is the tab on the BPE website, could I go in there and click on a tab and know where to send my donation as an individual?
Yes, I believe if you send it to the BPE mailing address and note in your memo, it has to be written to the Board of Public Education, but then you would note in your memo that it would be for the public charter or for the Community Choice Schools account. I believe that's how they would accept that. And then also, we do have a donor application or a donor form that you could fill out also to attach to that to clarify that donation.
All right, I'm
Well,
just going to refine that really quick. So actually, at this point, we cannot take individual donations, or we've decided not to take individual donations due to the interpretation of the law. It says that we can take from private entities, which implies foundations or organizations or businesses. So if you're a private business owner, you could certainly send a donation through your business in the way that John just described. But right now we're holding off on individual donations until we get better clarification in the law.
all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
But just to expand upon that, I believe that it would be hard pressed You could initiate a lawsuit with that, Dee, if you'd like to. We could start to,
Just what we need.
that would be one of the, you could sue for the right to donate, because I don't believe that we could deny your donation based upon an interpretation of the law, because I don't, as a nonprofit person who's worked in it for quite a while, I think it would be hard pressed for somebody to deny you the ability to donate to this. But that's my opinion.
Right. So
Well,
let's put
then-
it this way. If we get a donation from an individual, we will call our lawyer first and foremost and spend a little money there on legal fees, but it would be well worth it to get a legal opinion on it.
Well,
I think we
maybe
can do it
we'll-
without a lawsuit.
Yeah, maybe we'll hold off on another lawsuit. I think we have enough on our plate right now. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that clarification. I really appreciate you adding that. I think it's important. Okay. Now it's my turn to give a report about the advance. And here we go. Okay, so we are big geeks, and so we called our retreat an advance because we don't want to move backward. We want to move forward. And during this extended working session, the commission met for a 2-day work session to discuss the scope of work that needs to be completed to prepare the state for the implementation of the Community Choice Schools Act. The commission consulted statute and engaged in discussion to first isolate the purpose of the law and then to create a strategic vision for the commission as a statewide authorizer of choice schools as required in the law for each authorizer. So the commission has 2 primary purposes. One is to authorize, oversee, and hold accountable public community choice schools for fulfilling the terms of their contracts. And 2 is to approve, oversee, and evaluate the effectiveness of public community choice school authorizers. The remainder of the session was spent reviewing and understanding the various components of the application, contract, and performance frameworks, documents that we're going to discuss in more depth today, as reported by Member Brown, and as placed on the agenda. Additionally, the commission sampled Epicenter, a software program designed to organize a portfolio of schools for an authorizer and to streamline communications between an authorizer and charter holders. And lastly, the commission started but did not finish an exercise to define the commission's core values, also known as guiding principles. So this is work that will have to be completed in their near future, as identifying core values is going to be an integral part of maintaining organizational health and clarity of decision-making, and it will guide the implementation process as we refine and prepare more policy. I realize now that I've finished this report that the part I left out was our strategic vision. And so I'm going to just quickly pull this up on my computer. Give me 1 second. Here. Actually, it's in the... Okay, so this would be the minutes. Okay, because I do want to read it out loud for the public. This is all in the minutes that we approved at the beginning of this session, but we did clarify. Here we go. So as far as the strategic vision that we articulated during the advance, as we said, the vision of the Montana Community Choice Schools Commission is to develop the full educational potential of each student by fostering a diverse and dynamic public education landscape. So that's where it stands right now. And of course, I think the purpose is pretty set, like we're pretty clear that that is the purpose. But as far as the strategic vision goes, the law also encourages authorizers to update that from time to time. So that's something that's like a living document also. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so moving right along. Okay, so item number 4, So this is going to be combined discussion and business. And since we're going to be doing both of those during this agenda item, I'm going to put you all at ease. And if at any point during this discussion, the need to make a vote comes up, then we will use normal board parliamentary procedures to guide that motion, should we need to. So looking at the agenda packet, okay, so initially, I didn't put these on the official agenda, but there are these two items at the very front that were, one was a calendar, like a month at a glance, 12-month calendar. And so I just want to go ahead and ask if anyone had any, this is something, again, that's going to be growing over time. And if anyone noticed anything that's not on here, that should be on here. I noticed one error, but I highlighted it, and it was under May, where I had some old language in here I hadn't updated yet. It said that within the first week of May, the Montana Community Choice School Commission will set a 3-day application acceptance period, but we decided in the steering committee that it would be better to do a single day, and that'll be in the policy process document that we look at. Okay, and then the other part here is an annual calendar of reporting requirements. And this too is a document that's going to grow over time. And it was interesting because in the steering committee meeting, people from other states who are authorizers were like, we hope you're making that list because that's going to be your guiding principle, like for everything throughout the year. So this too is going to grow. So I just want to kind of put that out there, see if anyone had any comments.
And you know, Madam Chair, I thought at the advance, I really liked not only putting that timeline out there, but also the power of the epicenter to pull documents and inform the schools about what's coming up, what's expected, what's due. I think it's a powerful document that I think is going to be adopted actually in the rest of public schools in Montana once we start using it.
Absolutely. I felt the same way. I was relieved to know that other people had been here first, already developed the technology to assist, which will be great.
Madam Chair, I had a question on the second item there under February.
Okay.
So by February 1st of each year, the authorizer shall determine the basic entitlement need and notify the superintendent of OPI of amounts. Is that just a count, like an enrollment count, or what kind of information is needed to determine that?
Right. So that is yet to be determined and part of the policy that we will build out. But essentially, the law gives the authority to the commission to prorate a basic entitlement should they need to. So right now, the basic entitlement amounts are low enough that, you know, it's probably likely. I mean, I shouldn't say anything because I don't know that what anything is likely. But for example, the reason why that was put in there was should a micro school like to develop and they're in some kind of a donated facility that takes care of fixed costs, maybe that whatever, it just kind of depends on what the scenario is, that the commission could choose that it's in the state's best interest to maybe lower the basic entitlement for that particular applicant. Now, we can't go over what the max is, but we could go down from there should we see that fit. And that would be a discussion, obviously, and a vote. And, you know, we would allow public comment and all of that to do it. But rather than presuming that upon signing a contract and receiving a charter, every single applicant is going to get the full basic entitlement, we just put that in there for discretion to protect the state.
That makes sense.
All right. And it's in statute that it has to be done by February 1st.
Okay.
Any other questions there? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the application review and approval process policy for the initial community choice schools application. This is the one that's got 11 steps on it, and it's categorized in chronological order, starting in February with the release of the application to the public and all of that. So this is your time to speak up and let us know what you guys think. If, you know, kind of thinking about the guiding questions here, we want to look at questions and concerns. We want to make sure that everyone feels that the document is clear and concise and easy to read. Does any of the information in the document seem to be redundant or unnecessary? Does the sequence make, you know, in this document make sense? And is there anything missing and or what could be better? It's just sort of to facilitate conversations.
Madam Chair, I think because we're in our infancy, if you will, I think going forward, we're going to probably make some changes, but I think the framework is there. And the nice thing is we can adjust the things that we see being needed and eliminate the things we see that are not needed. I think we're so new to this and so young to this that it's going to be a process. And that's what I like about it. We can have the framework, but it isn't like in stone.
Right. That's exactly right. And that really goes for all of these documents that we're looking at. They're all in progress, which is why they all have draft written across the middle of them in a watermark.
I guess I had a question number 5 under May. So basically that's any incomplete application will be identified within 72 hours of receipt, and the applicants may have the opportunity to remedy the incomplete status within the current application cycle. What's the definition of that cycle, I guess, would be my question.
Okay, so the cycle would be the 60 days that the law permits from when the applications are turned in to when the commission votes on whether or not to approve the application or to deny the application. So that is a good point. I'm going to make a note here to, again, that's the hope. This is exactly where we're doing this, is because when, you know, when we've looked at these 100 times, when we've read the law thousands of times, it's like we just know it in our brains, but we forget that not everyone has that memorized. Thank you. Go ahead, Mark, when you're ready there.
Yeah, in that same section where it says in number 5 under May, that second sentence where it says applications will be identified within 72 hours of receipt. What is that really? Are we defining what's being identified? We're just identifying that we've received it, or we're identifying issues within the application. That's why they're giving opportunity to remedy. So we're just identifying that it's incomplete. Is that what that is?
Well, we're identifying that it's been received, which honestly, if we're using Epicenter, will be instantaneous. So, but again, just, you know, trying to, as far as the completeness review, that is very likely. And McCall, correct me if I'm, just because you were at all of these meetings and we spoke to Melissa about this afterwards too, and you helped with this document. But the completeness review is, yeah, it's like we need to make sure that everything is actually filled out. If something inadvertently was left out, that's like clearly an accident or something. It's not like, you know, we're saying you know, you may have the opportunity to remedy this if it's minor. If it's something more substantial, then it, as this reads, it would have to go into the next cycle in order to fix it. John had a very strong opinion about this, and I think it would be a good time to share that with everyone, John, if you want to.
I just felt like it should either say will or won't. They either will be able to complete it within the time period, but I think that we need to have a hard date so that we understand that if somebody's making an application, and I was kind of under the impression after the steering committee meeting that if they submit it to Epicenter, it won't accept the application unless it is complete. So it's not like somebody has to be reviewing those as soon as they come in within, you know, 3 days, that they have to look that over. But I just felt that either they will be able to submit or they won't be able to resubmit. And that this is basically a situation that we're expecting these people to be professionals enough to teach our kids. So I guess if they're going to if they can't fill out an application, maybe that's a good sign that they're not cut out for this. That's, I just think that, you know, we're just trying to make this go. So either they will or they won't. I don't think may is a good word to use when you're talking about what we're trying to accomplish here.
I might just add to that, John, putting in a time frame, like you need to resubmit within 5 days instead of maybe having that whole 60-day window.
I agree.
So that we have time to do our work on that. You know, a 3 to 5 day return.
But the whole process is pretty well structured out that we don't have time
Right.
to allow somebody to go, okay, well, you weren't complete, so, you know, fill it out or do whatever and resubmit it. We've got to be able to do our stuff. So I agree. I think that we either define a timeline or say, you know, if the applications have to be in by April 1st, then April 1st. If you're not complete by April 1st, well, try again next year.
Okay, do you guys want to have McCall pull up this document and we can work on editing it together? I would like to do that.
Yes. Is McCall going to pull it up?
There she-
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're on number 5. Okay, so who wants to take a swing at this?
Well, I guess I would just want to add in there, and the applicants may have the opportunity to remedy the incomplete status within
Oh,
5 days of feedback or something.
okay. Oh, sorry, McCall. I was like, did I send McCall PDFs? You look like you're good.
You did send me PDFs, but I was able to turn them into Word docs really quick. So
You're amazing.
there may be
Thank you.
some
I'm
funky
sorry.
but it's okay. I'll make these. Oh, they need changes in red, so you can go back and make sure it aligns.
Yeah, if we can track them, that would be great.
Yeah, so I might just go one line up from that, where it says applicants may have the opportunity to remedy the incomplete status within 5 days of notification of an incomplete application.
Okay, say it again. Is this where you thought it was supposed to go?
No, I was gonna say, so 1, 2, the last line there actually, instead of within the current application cycle, within 5 days of notification of an incomplete application, or something like that.
Okay, I think 5 days is too long because like John said, we've got a 60-day period. So if we're gonna put a number on there,
3 days?
yeah,
Yeah, 3 business days.
day.
Great.
Thank you. That's good. Okay. So
Maybe within 3 days of notification of an incomplete application.
Did
I
I
like-
not understand right that if they're they have to submit this application through our system, right? And will our system accept an incomplete application?
So no, well, first off, we're presuming that we're going to have the system. So we really do have to kind of, you know, be ready to do this by hand should we need to.
Okay.
So that's the first thing.
Just
But
wanted to be
you bring
clear
up a
about
good point. We've been told that the system will not allow any blank spaces. So if something were missing, it would catch it right away and send it right back to them. So they would not be able to submit and they'd be dealing with it on their end within that 24-hour period, knowing that they need to get it into us for that. So that would be their own thing. So, and again, that would be something minor probably. But the completeness review by the subcommittee, it's my understanding that we really do need to have human eyes on each of these. Like the software system cannot be trusted to have human judgment. So something may be submitted, but the committee may feel that the response is insufficient or unacceptable for some reason, in which case this 3-day period would come in if we wanted to do that. But again, John, back to your point, maybe it's just a lesson of hard knocks. And it's like, come back next cycle. And right now we're talking about doing an annual cycle, but certainly in the future, the commission can choose to do more cycles. We're not limited by the law.
Well, I think that if the system will not let them submit blank spaces, then I don't think we want to necessarily get into a discussion with an applicant during this 72 hours that, well, we don't quite think your materials that you submitted were proper for this application. You know, that becomes a judgment call. And really we just have, you know, it basically comes down to is, well, we don't think they're a good candidate at this point in time. Now, maybe when we deny their application, we can tell them, well, we didn't think that this was appropriate. I guess I want to be careful about whether this may word kind of bothers me that, you know, that based upon whose judgment, does it have to be voted on by the entire commission that we're going to allow this person, but we're not going to allow that person? Because either they will or they won't. But do we want to get into that discussion by saying, well, we might let you do it, but then again, we might not. What is it your kids always say? Maybe is no, and you know, I'm just.
No, I think maybe is yes.
Maybe is yes, and
right,
whatever.
Okay.
But
so how about this? What would you think about it, John, and everyone, if we said, instead of completeness review, if we said sufficiency review, because that gives, it's just a little refinement there, and then change may to will. Like if, again, this is all yet to be defined in our policy. That's our phase 4 that we're going to be looking at. And again, we can always come back and change this, but the way, you know, I think the way I've been looking at this is that there will be an application subcommittee. That group of 3 will be responsible for being the human eyes on the applications, in addition to a director, if we have a director at that point. And then if there's anything that like the computer didn't catch because it's sufficient enough for the computer, but not sufficient enough for us to advance it into that 60-day process. Because if we already can look at it and tell that it's insufficient, why would we spend our 60 days going through the entire review process for that application? And that's kind of to your point, John. Like, I think that we're looking, you know, like, why would we do that if we can tell already it's going to be denied? So there's, because it's insufficient. And it's hard to predict what those could be, I guess.
that's right, because we don't know all, but a complete application means all the blanks were filled in. So I believe that I would agree with that. And, you know, as long as the group also, but I think the other 2 things is we should, anywhere the word incomplete is, we should use insufficient to stay consistent with our, Dee could probably comment on this more. So as an English, I'm not that good with English, but I just think that to follow through, if we said, you know, we're looking at it from a sufficiency standpoint, well, that's on us, then we're on us. But you know, the complete means that all the blanks were filled in. So that's great. All we're going to look at is sufficiency. This is a good solid application, or it's not an application. Here, you have 3 days to change this.
I think John's right. We need to use the word insufficient instead of incomplete.
Okay, so we have it in the second sentence there, McCall. It's the second word in the second sentence. And then we also have it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so basically, if we're saying that we will review and for sufficiency within 72 hours, and then if there's something that we would like to have remedied because we believe it's worthy of remedying quickly, therefore going through the whole process, they would have 72 hours to do that. 3 days. That means we're 6 days out, 6 business days out from the date that the application was accepted. Now, granted, we might only have one application, but we could possibly have more. And again, like we said at the beginning, Dee, about this being a framework, as things start to develop over time and we see that there are going to be more applications, this is something that we could always revisit.
Yeah, and I would just add to John's point of, the professionalism and can you, are you equipped to run a school if you're not equipped to submit a complete application? I definitely agree with that standard. And I think as we're getting started, there's probably going to be a lot of coaching going on because this is so new to everyone. So I like that standard for completeness, but at the same time, I think there might need to be a little bit of coaching or nurturing in this application process to really help these teams think through all of the detail that needs to go into the application and the launch of a school.
Right. And in other states, they've developed courses for these governing boards to take in preparation for every single step of the chartering ecosystem, from application all the way through to renewal. So over time, that is probably something that we would develop and have available online or whatever. We'd have to see if it goes. Okay, so I have a small little thing to pick at, which is we say 72 hours and then we say 3 business days. Can we just pick one, or like both of them are 72 hours or both of them are 3 business days? Do you guys have a preference?
I like the business days. That's just less to manage. We got it at 2:00. We'll have it back by,
I think that I agree. I think that 3 business days is much more clear.
Okay, great. And then also, looking at this, I'm thinking ahead, thinking, well, we should just make the applications due on a Monday. So we could get it all done within a week. The worst case scenario would be the following Monday, right? So, okay.
Good thinking.
Because it's possible that that sufficiency review that the subcommittee would know within 24 hours, in which case they could notify them and the 3 days would start ticking then. Okay, so let's read it out loud. Each application must pass a sufficiency review conducted by the Commission's application subcommittee. Any insufficient applicants will be identified within 3 business days of receipt, and the applicants will have the opportunity to remedy the insufficient status within 3 business days of notification of an insufficient application. What do you guys think?
Do we need to capitalize applications both places or all places, or
Yeah,
just the 2?
I think we've
Great.
decided it should be a proper noun. The official documents, if we keep them proper nouns throughout, it just,
Okay, 3rd line then needs a capital A on applicants.
oh, but right. So the question is, should we make the applicants capital or just the application?
Right.
D, we will defer to your thoughts here. What do you think?
Well, they're 2 different entities. That's what I say, the application and the applicants. It's okay, I think.
And Trish, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we went through this, the reason you capitalized application was because you will have a formal application document that's what this is referring to.
Right.
And so making that capitalized is referring to that formal document.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, so let's keep it lowercase for applicants. I think we do capitalize governing board going through the process, but again, these are all things that, thank you, Dick, because we want to have consistency for sure, and we should be catching these throughout. And again, like capitalization is not something that's going to require a commission vote in the end, but it's nice to notice them. All right, are there any other numbers that you guys wanted to go over here?
I think that was the only one that during the steering committee too, that we had a little bit of a discussion on.
Right. I just want to make sure everyone sees what a tight schedule this is with, and that we And that we decided to, that as in the steering committee, decided to interpret the time as 60 business days. But then there's a switch on number 8. So I just want to point that out for transparency purposes. So when we turn it over to the Board of Public Education to get their input, we've gone to that the board charter committee. So we will turn in these summaries to them. They will have 15 days to review the information, share it with the full board, and provide the commission with input. For example, questions or concerns to inform the commission's final communications with the applicants before the commission convenes for action. So meaning if there's something that comes up, we still will be in that application phase. It'll have to be a quick turnaround. But as McCall pointed out, if this goes into play, we will all know that it is going to happen. So people can kind of arrange their schedules way in advance to make sure there's time put aside to hit these dates. But I wanted to just kind of ask you guys, make sure we brought that up if this seems possible to you.
So I just saw, that the word 15 calendar days. So that's just 2 weeks compared to 45 business days, which is considerably longer. I guess, do we give that BPE business days or calendar days?
If we give them business days, we're going to run out of time.
So do we have business days, but they don't?
That's the ask. Again, this
Okay.
is not law. This is just a policy. McCall, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, when we were talking about this, the law doesn't define business or calendar days for any of your timelines. It just basically says days. So I think you guys are creating in policy what you want that to look like. Exactly what Trish said. If you gave the Board of Public Ed 15 business days to review the information, it's going to cut into your time. And so if you just give us 15 calendar days, there's a better chance it leaves you a little bit more wiggle room. And frankly, like Trish said, we're going to know this is happening. The board's going to be able to get their hands on this information likely as soon as you guys have it. So the ability for us to review it in a timely manner should be fine, especially given an anticipated small number of applications. I mean, our board had to do this for 19 of them in a very small time frame. So I think that 15 calendar days is okay. And it is just relevant to the charter committee of our board. So it's just 3 people that will have to make time and plan for this. So we'll make it work, is what I'm saying.
And we've also designed it to fall during the time period that they have one of their meetings. So it's their strategy meeting that they have every summer. And we've placed this to match that so that the committee could then bring it to the full board should they want to. They would be convening already.
Just have a question of clarification on there. So what is the BPE's role then in like approval or feedback or Trish or McCall, maybe you just.
So it's to give us input and to help inform our decision. So it's really to make sure we put time aside for the BPE to have a say. Yes, they're part of the public and this is going to be open to the public the entire time, but this is more of a formalized invitation asking for engagement. So that's kind of, that's the idea behind this. It's like, we'd like to work that into the process. That's best for the state. And again, it's just a request because the BPE can decide whatever they want to do. They could say thanks, but no thanks. We can't dictate what they can do. So that's the thinking there.
Okay, thank you.
How do you feel about that? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all makes sense, right? I mean, we have a line of reporting under the BPE. So yeah, I was just curious, like, voting wise or anything like that, BPE. So it's basically another advisory set of eyes on these applications is what I'm hearing.
That's exactly right. And if you look at number 9, there's an additional layer there where the last sentence says that the board's charter committee members, the chair of the board, or the board's executive director may join the commission in formal deliberations about each application. Again, they won't have a vote there, but we're inviting them to be at the table to have those final deliberations.
But when you're looking at number 9 and you have 120 business days, I mean, I'm just doing it quickly in my head. That's like 6 months.
Right, and that would be if we had more than, is it more than 3 applications?
It is more than 3.
Yeah, so starting with 4. So again, that's in the law. So it doesn't mean we can't do it faster. It just means that, you know, should we be inundated like the BPE was with 19 applications? we could possibly meet the deadline. But certainly it's not saying that it has to go out that long.
And I'm sure, given that statement, do you want me to change this to say that time frame may extend to 120 business days?
I like that. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. You know, I realized if we go back to number 5, McCall, we forgot something. We were going to define the application cycle right there. So, so we know an application cycle is a 60-day period or 60 business days is how we're interpreting it. So that last sentence, and the applicants will have so hang on. We've changed it now. Oh, I was on number 6. Okay, there we go. So we'll have the opportunity to remedy the insufficient status within 3 business days of notification of an insufficient application. So, before we had the applicants will have the opportunity to remedy the insufficient status within the current application cycle. So it looks like we just took that out. I just want to make sure we're getting this right. So each application must pass a sufficiency review conducted by the commission's application subcommittee. Any insufficient applicants will be identified within 3 business days of receipt, and the applicants will have the opportunity to remedy, because we made it 3 days, the insufficient status within 3 business days of notification. Okay, good. So we resolved it by doing that. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Sorry. Okay, any other little things? Okay. So does anyone have a motion for this document?
I do.
Go ahead.
Great, let's hear it.
I move we adopt the application review process policy as edited to guide the timing, reviewing, accepting, and denying of applications.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded that the commission adopt the application review process policy as edited to guide the timeline of reviewing, accepting, and denying applications. Is there any discussion? Okay, is there any, I see we have one attendee. Is there any discussion from the public?
I see no hands up.
Okay, great. So it has been moved and seconded that the commission will adopt the application review process policy as edited to guide the timeline of reviewing, accepting, and denying applications. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, so the motion has been approved. Great. McCall, I want to ask you, or Chris maybe, when we're on a Zoom webinar like this, is voting verbally okay for you guys, or do you want us to raise our hands? You're good. You can.
Thanks, great. Yep.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, great. So now let's move on to the application. Okay, so this is an 11-page document, and again, our guiding questions here, are there any questions or concerns? Is the document clear, concise, and easy to read? Does any of the information in the document seem redundant or unnecessary? Does the sequence of the information within the document make sense? And what could be better, or is maybe something missing? Okay, just want to. Go ahead.
Oh,
Oh,
I was
please,
just
no.
wondering, on page 4, under board governance and school leadership, are background checks required, and should that be a part of the application?
Right, so, okay, perfect. Let's look at this. Okay, so provide an overview of your proposed school's board governance plan. In the overview, please be sure to include the information listed below and complete and submit the board governance information form found in Appendix C. Okay, so, okay, everything that's in here is from the law. Like, it's basically all taken directly out of statute. There's very little change that's been added. So, individual background information, resumes, evidence of current background checks. So, yeah, so that's how they, right. That's okay. That's why we're doing this. So, it's the second one down that there's evidence of current background checks. Now, again, we might want to define what that is in policy, and that's probably a good idea for us to do. So that would go on the list of phase 4, all of the various internal policies that we're going to develop around this. To say what's sufficient for a background check, but yeah, asking for it up front during the application stage is helpful.
Yeah. Sorry, I just missed that.
No, that's okay.
Is that common to request an individual or a group to provide background checks without, I mean, normally my experience has always been I provide what information they want or need, and they do their background checks if they want to proceed.
Right. The law definitely requires it for the board members of these choice schools.
For who to accomplish it, though? It's required by the government requires the person to provide their own background check?
I believe they would, like, I'm just guessing, but you're right, we're going to have to define this. But as a teacher, for example, or as a person who would go in to visit schools, I would literally have to go get my fingerprints done through the FBI. And they would, I'd even have to get some immunizations to go into some schools and turn all that in before I was allowed to be on campus. So I'm presuming that we, it's like, go to the local sheriffs and do this, whatever. Like, we can say what level of check we want to have on these, because it just says background check.
Yeah, because as an employer, I wasn't going to trust the background check that my employee provided. We always did our own. If that employee, I mean, I guess in the application process, do we really care unless they submit a successful application and then background checks would be done? I guess that's a question for internal policy, but I know as an employer, I'm certainly not going to trust what a prospective employee does until I think, well, they're a pretty good candidate. I'm going to run my background check now. And then you find out, it just seemed like a kind of a situation where you wonder. Mark can probably speak to that also.
Yeah, I would agree with John. Typically when we go through the interview process, one of the things we do is we just basically make them have them make a statement basically to that effect. So we make them claim that this is their background. But I would agree with John. I think at some point we're gonna have to perform that check ourselves. But I think if
Right.
we wanted to have them make a statement previous or along with the application, that would be appropriate. For, like for a lot of different things, like on federal forms and things, they basically, you state, that you either are or not something in relation to your background.
I'm
And I
just
think maybe
wondering
do-
timeline on that with our, our quick turnaround on review of the applications. Plus now we could be submitting 60 background checks. Is that logistically feasible?
Well, that's why we put it on them as part of the application process. And this was a recommendation from other states. In fact, they've gone through that whole process of investing all the time into an application. And then if they wait till the end, problems come up. And then you've signed a contract with a governing board and you're in a very terrible situation. So by putting the onus on them to submit those background checks, and also if you notice, go down a little bit more where it says Appendix D, these disclosure forms, we're asking for those up front too. We haven't developed those yet. We're going to have to develop what kind of information we want disclosed about like business relations between CMOs and EMOs or facilities or whatever, like board members. Please go ahead.
I think if there is a process or a provider that we can find that will do that and will allow them to do that, then I'm all for having them do the work. As an employer, the hoops you have to jump through and the things you have to prove to be able to get these background checks and to get approved with these companies to be able to request this information about people, it is fairly onerous. And so for us to have people all trying to get these companies to approve them to get their own background check, I'm not sure, unless we have a company that says you can go and get a background of yourself and that they'll give you a, certified copy or whatever. I'm not quite sure of that process off the top of my head, but just give you an example. To get a really good background check, it'll take me a month or two to get signed up with a particular company because they verify everything before. Because if you've seen some of these background checks, you'd be pretty amazed at how in depth they are, and so they really protect those things. So that's something I think we need to really take a good look at.
Well, I'd like to really know exactly, I mean, when we're talking about people who are in a school setting, do I really care where they graduated high school? Maybe, or college? Maybe. I want to know basically if they're a sexual predator, if they've been charged with crimes. That's the kind of stuff that would be the most important to me if somebody were around my kids.
Well, you also have the situation that we started to dig into with the Montana Community Foundation about previous history with hate groups. Who defines a hate group that pertains to, what one person says is a hate group and another person says, well, I belong to that. That there's a lot of muddy waters there that, basically, I guess, are they a felon or have they had, and then have they had previous, problems with drugs, and are they in, there's, I guess what we should do is try to establish, what happens? I think schools are supposed to be doing background checks. Do they have a standard policy for the state for a background check? Maybe that's all we need.
Right. I think this might be a question for Liz. I put our lawyer, our legal counsel right now, I put a marker here to ask her if there's a predefined background check within Montana law. Or if not, I do think you guys are right that we'll need to, perhaps vet a company ourselves that we can recommend for them to use. But again, it's like this application, whatever the due date is for the application, let's just say it's like May 1st. whoever these applicants are will have been working on these applications for like well over a year, probably. So they're going to have plenty of time to collect all of this, but we're responsible for evaluating it and interviewing their board. Go ahead, Dee.
I guess my question is to McCall. McCall, in the state of Montana, are other public schools required to do a background check on anyone they hire, including felonies and drug testing?
A good question. There are requirements for background checks, I know, for substitute teachers and anyone coming in to volunteer, from what I understand. I don't know how that formal process goes. I do believe the background check is done when you apply for your license, that information is shared. And if you remember, Dee, there's a network, and I can't always remember what the acronym is, where educator licenses are on this network, and you can see if there's any prior background to it. So for example, in Montana, if the Board of Public Education revokes a license, it goes on that sort of platform or network. So there is information, there's ability to look it up there, and it'll flag if an educator has some questionable background. I just don't know what that formality is because it is done at the Office of Public Instruction.
Thank you.
There you go, John. That's next question to ask. This is what I meant by the OPI has been so helpful. They're really responsive to us, which is great. Okay, great. There was something I was going to say here. What do you guys think about these disclosure forms? Because this is one of the things that's being added. Like I said, almost everything on here is straight out of statute. It doesn't specifically ask for this, but this is sort of best practices when you're going into contracting anyway. So this came up in the steering committee and with the various lawyers that we had on the steering committee and helping and everything. I just want to point it out and make sure, ask you guys how you feel about that.
I think that's smart. So you're basically talking about any conflicts of interest that may arise. Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, I would certainly want to know up front rather than later.
Okay. Dee, did you see that the order was changed? So under application guidelines on page 2, we had a lot of discussion about this in the steering committee about which order these should be in, and really just kind of to highlight the purpose and the strategic vision and kind of all of that. So we right off the bat added that the applicants must be a nonprofit organization because the committee pointed out that they don't have the law memorized in the same way we do. So that needed to be in the forefront. What else was on here? Wait, there was another part where we changed the order.
Community need.
There you go. It was the community need. We moved that up. Oh, and I also want to point out on page 3, so under selection criteria. Now, again, all of this is going to be, addressed more thoroughly in phase 4, which will probably go on for quite a bit, because there's going to be a lot of policy that we have to develop. But here, and I point out the last bullet because this is a discussion that we had at the advance, and I want to make sure everyone is good with the way the wording is on this. So it says applicants showing a commitment to seek out and serve students at risk of academic failure, academic disengagement, to advance Montana's commitment to the preservation of American Indian cultural integrity, or to eliminate the American Indian achievement gap, will be considered with greatest ardor in the application process. So we had taken out the word preference because then we were like, how do we define preference? What does that mean? Like, we're going to read the application first, or like, you know what I mean? It was just confusing. And so just rather let it know that this is in fact the legislator's intent that is written in the law. And as the statewide authorizer, we are embracing that and recognizing that and just basically saying we'd be eager to see these kinds of applications.
So why do we use the word ardor?
We could say eager. I think I went to thesaurus.com. I was like, oh, that sounds good.
Ah,
Should we change it to eager?
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know, but Ardor, I mean,
Okay.
people are gonna have to look it up, Trish.
Okay, McCall, that's you. Perfect. That's why we do this. I never have a conversation with Dee where then I don't end up on Grammarly.com.
Oh, Lord.
We're just- So on page,
Another, if we're ready.
hang on, let's wait for McCall to pull up.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just want to do one at a time. So page 3, because this is the first change we're making, the last bullet under selection criteria. And it's the very last line, and change ardor to eager. I love it. Okay, great. Kathy.
Okay, so I'm just kind of philosophically thinking about under operations plan, we have student discipline,
Wait, can you tell me what page number you're on?
page 5.
Okay.
It's the third bullet. And we have student discipline, the proposed schools student discipline policies, including those for special education students. And I'm just wondering if that might be better suited under learning environment with more of a focus on setting expectations and so more like describing expectations for student behavior, including how they will be taught and reinforced versus just a focus on going to discipline. So how are you setting your kind of school culture up and your students for success versus just going straight to the discipline plan?
So are you suggesting moving it out of operations and moving it to page 4 under academic program and performance?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Let's see.
Any other thoughts on that or?
I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, it's just that sequence was definitely one of the things we wanted to discuss. What do you guys think? I think it fits better there because it is a little bit more about the mission, the culture, those kinds of things.
Right.
And that this will vary from school to school for sure.
Yes.
What do you think, McCall, about cutting and pasting that over? And then Kathy, since you brought this up, where do you want to put it under academic program and performance? Where should we nestle it?
So I think it's fine at the end, or maybe before, I guess.
I'm thinking maybe between curriculum and professional development.
Yeah. Or maybe before or after students with special needs, because it kind of, there's a comment in there about,
Right.
but I mean, academic program, curriculum, instruction, learning environment, then professional development, assessment. I like it after curriculum. Not that I think it really matters, but
I think it does.
okay.
And I actually think in looking at this list also and the order of it, what do you guys think about moving professional development down the list to right before extracurricular programs or possibly after it?
I like that too.
Okay.
McCall, is it okay if I put something in the chat with language for learning environment? Do we have a chat?
I'm
We
wondering-
may not have a chat in this webinar format, but I'm happy to.
We can go slow and you can read it. Are you saying to add a bullet that says learning environment?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at it and then we can all assess it.
Okay.
Do you really fast? Do you want student discipline here? I'm sorry, I moved it like too many times, so I'm wondering if I got it in the right spot.
I think put it under curriculum and before assessment. So move it up one.
Somewhere here, I have a document and I drafted some language. I'm just trying to, a lot of tabs open.
So
After student assessment?
after curriculum and instruction.
Oh.
There you go. Perfect.
and needs to go here. Okay. All right, Kathy, where do you want learning environment to go?
So I would put it, instead of using student discipline, I would title that learning environment. And following that, I would suggest, tell me when you're ready here.
I'm ready.
So it's right after learning environment. Yep. Describe expectations for student behavior, including how the expectations will be taught and reinforced. And then period, detailed discipline policies for all students, as well as for students with special needs. Open to feedback on any of that. I just like that it's more proactive and it's focused on culture and climate and teaching expectations versus punitive first.
Okay, I'm just gonna compare it to something really quick,
Yeah.
so. I just want to compare it, to statute.
Good, yeah.
Okay, so. Let me.
Wouldn't we, I mean, if you're detailing the discipline policy for all students, wouldn't that also include special needs? I mean, it's all students.
Right, so here's how it reads in statute, and this is in section 9, Community Choice Schools Proposal Process, and it's these words exactly. It says subsection N, the proposed choice schools student discipline policies, including those for special education students. And my guess would be it's just doubled down on it to ensure that it's getting addressed. So this is in keeping with that. So we're saying if we call it learning environment and describe expectations for student behavior, including how the expectations will be taught and reinforced, detailed discipline policies for all students, as well as for students with special needs. I agree. I mean, we could take that out because we do have a special bullet where we've, put students with special needs. Let's just make sure we have discipline in there. A description of plans to identify and successfully serve students with disabilities who are English language learners, and students who are academically challenged and gifted students in compliance with applicable law and regulations. And that's straight from statute too. So that doesn't say specifically discipline, but the statute does say for discipline, we need to include special education. So I think we should leave it in there, even though it's a little bit redundant, because it's not going to hurt. And
Then maybe we should use the words from the statute, say including as instead of
Okay.
as well as.
Yeah, I like that.
Perfect. So detailed discipline policies for all students, including those for special education students.
Including those with special needs. I mean, that's
Well, the
easier.
law says for special education students. So,
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's use those words.
okay.
Like that.
So Kathy, I think this is a good time to kind of discuss this. I'm thinking with your experience and working in charter schools and, with all of that, tell me what you've seen in real life with ideals, expectations for student behavior and all of that.
Yeah, so this was actually one of the trainings that I would lead with new schools, was really helping them think through their learning environment and think through their expectations. So you're proactively teaching students, appropriate hallway procedures, lunchroom procedures, just, how we show respect for classmates. I mean, all of these kinds of things. So just getting your mind around how does your school function with, X number of students in there, so that your routines and your procedures, your behavior expectations are all outlined so that you're not constantly focused on the negative. You're teaching them what you expect versus just punitive. That's not how we do it. That's not how we do it. But you're teaching them how you do it, what is expected, how you function in a school setting, classroom setting, lunchroom setting, recess setting, arrival, dismissal, etc.
That makes sense. I know one of the schools I visited in Idaho had this very well defined, and you could, being an observer or a visitor at the school, it was so obvious, and it was kind of amazing because they weren't running around correcting the kids all the time. So like one of the things is that they don't have bells at this school because the teachers decide when it's the right time to take a break for their kids, and they have the freedom to do that on a daily basis, however they want. And so the children have been taught to, when they're walking in the hallways, to not use their voices. And it was just amazing to see, 7-year-olds completely just mimicking each other and walking through quietly through the hallway so they weren't disturbing other classes that were in session. And then the second they got outside, it was like, they were doing the cutest thing. And seeing teenagers do the same thing. You know what I mean? It was just like across the board. Clearly, that is something that had been taught. No one even had to tell me. I could see it.
Right. Yeah. So more focused on that versus someone in the hall. Oh, you need to shut your mouth. You need to be quiet. Like, harping down on kids versus.
Right. This is what's expected. We do. Okay.
Yeah. And then you'll have the occasional, discipline needed, but more focused on teaching.
All right. I think that's good. Okay. You got anything else for us?
Well, I was hoping that Katie Franklin would be here because I was just curious about the wording of under startup plan.
What page is that one on?
That is page 7.
Okay. Got it.
So just wording of mental health versus well-being.
Okay. You know what we should do? Since these are all working drafts and they're going to be going forward, how about if I put this back on the agenda for our next meeting so that we could have a full discussion, including her perspective? I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, perfect. Great.
Okay.
And I think that was all I had.
Anything else? I'm just making a note to make sure I get that. So this is the application. Okay. Yeah, we might even have more changes by then. You know what I mean? As things start getting worked out. So. For mental health. Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion for the application?
I move the commission adopt the application draft as edited and to use for the applicants to advance to the next stage of to advance, period. And knowing that we're going to bring it back up at a future meeting.
Okay, I second that. I'm going to refine it a little bit. So it has been moved and seconded that the commission adopt the application draft as edited to use for eventual applicants. Does that sound right? Was that close enough? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay, it has been, oh, sorry. I didn't take any discussion. Backtrack. Is there any discussion and any discussion from the public? Okay, we did take that vote. So out of sequence, sorry about that. So the motion has been approved. Okay, and we can go on to the contract. All right. Okay, so this one is lengthier. And again, remembering that all of these are in draft form, and they're just sort of advancing to be part of our archives at this point. But is there anything in this contract that anyone wanted to address? I've of course been through it so many times that at this point now, when I read it, I don't even know if it makes sense anymore. Because it's like, okay, so depending on you guys to see if you caught anything at all. Okay, and if there is nothing, I'm going to ask the commission again then, does anyone maybe have a motion for this contract?
Madam Chair, I move the commission adopt the contract draft to use for applicants that advance to the contracting stage.
Is there a second?
I
I'll
second.
second it.
Okay, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that the commission adopt the contract draft to use for applicants that advance to the contracting stage. Is there any discussion? Okay, is there any public comment or discussion? Okay, seeing none, it has been moved and seconded that the commission adopt the contract draft to use for applicants that advance to the contract stage. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion has been approved. That was a nice one. Okay. All right. And that brings us to the performance framework. Discussion, you guys, or questions, concerns, comments, any of that. And again, I'm going to say these guiding. So I'd already said questions and concerns. We also want to think about, is the document clear, concise, and easy to read? Does any of the information in the document seem redundant or unnecessary? Does the sequence of information within the document make sense? What could be better and or what might be missing? Okay, I'm gonna, oh, please go ahead. I was just gonna say something to say something.
I am just looking at under the academic measures. So we have measures of proficiency and we have measures of growth. And I'm actually looking, I think this is page 3 of the document. Yeah, yep.
And ELA proficiency.
Yeah, so math and ELA proficiency and math and ELA growth. And I'm just wondering if we want to put more definition under that so that proficiency is all students and likely a spring to spring measure. So you're looking year to year, all students are meeting proficiency standards. And that's kind of a gauge of programmatic success or and then math growth and ELA growth, looking more at same student. So specifying a fall to spring assessments of same students measuring their growth. And that way you're looking at individual student progress, if that makes sense. And maybe this is more defined in the contract. Maybe that's not the place for it because I do see as identified in the contract as language in there.
Right. Okay. So the performance frameworks will in fact be added to the contract. So they will be considered part of the contract. And so specifying it here is the right place. When it says that Montana Community Choice Schools will use growth rates or proficiency rates, depending on which one you're looking at. as determined by a nationally normed assessment to be determined in conjunction with the commission and identified in the contract. This to be determined in conjunction with the commission is straight from statute. So, so that's why it is in there, and that's how it's going to be done. And that's because what the law allows is for each choice school to choose their own assessment. And there was a lot of discussion about this in the steering committee. And even afterwards, people reached out to, me and McCall, and we had these discussions. This is going to be hard.
Yeah.
Really, really hard on the state. So like, while it's conceptually a great idea, there's more choice. A lot of times schools will complain about the assessment that they're using. They don't like it. It's not, doesn't align with their curriculum, blah, blah, blah. So it eliminates that because they're choosing it. And they're saying these are the ones we're going to use. Now, the law requires proficiency and growth. And just as you pointed out, Kathy, those are different. So generally proficiency is a summative assessment, typically in the spring, showing the programmatic success. That's a really good way of putting it. But again, we need to be careful not to define things because each of these assessments might even use different language. So for example, instead of proficiency, they might, there are like 3 other terms, I should get my notes out, that could be used depending on which assessment you use. That language is going to change. So we as a commission are going to have to edit and adapt each one of these performance frameworks based on the chosen or the assessment that has been determined in conjunction with the commission, if that makes sense. So most state laws either say you use the state assessment or you use this one, like they just give them one choice and that's it. And this law has given the freedom of choice.
Yeah.
So we have to adapt to that until the legislature changes it, which could happen in the future. But right now, this is how it is.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to be the hardest hurdle we have to jump this
But
entire
this will be further defined in each school's contract. So what I'm saying
Right.
about the detailed level, save that for when we know specifically what the assessment is and their
That's
model.
exactly right. So, so these are very much, like seriously, in dealing with, the National Charter School Institute, they had even recommended that we completely leave big language blanks in this so that we're not committing to anything. So that's why it says draft across the middle, because all of this language. And so what we could do eventually is we could like highlight those sections so that we know those are the blanks that need to be filled out for each applicant in general in making the decision. But yeah, so proficiency and growth are what are in the law. And those are the most general terms to describe exactly what you said, but it's possible that language is going to change from assessment to assessment. I want to jump to the very last framework, page 16, because this also came up in the steering committee, and this is a change from the document we looked at in the steering committee, where we've added a page of pre-approved nationally normed assessments. So I'm putting on our to-do list that we are going to have lectures from probably 3 specifically, like the most widely used assessment providers can come in, give the commission lectures. We can ask them 1,000 questions. And if we decide that these are tools that we can easily understand and we think they meet the requirements of statute and we're comfortable with them, we could pre-approve them, meaning that applicants, if they choose one of these 3 assessments, then this whole idea about, determined in conjunction with the commission, we can just, it's approved. You've chosen one of the 3 that we have vetted thoroughly already, and we're prepared for those. If they come in with a 4th option, or, some other option that they want to use, which is very likely going to happen, it's going to be, decided during the proposal review process, whether or not the commission is comfortable with the assessment that they want to use. And if we can adapt it to meet the needs of statute showing proficiency and growth. It's really confusing, all this assessment stuff is.
So yeah, like you said, the
Hard-
language is different and the standards for proficiency can be different. So yeah, I think that's a very smart approach to, yeah, have them present to us and we get educated and make some decisions from there.
And
Yes, please jump in.
I'm still one of these that says, unless we have an entry test and then a spring test, like you stated, Trish, do we really notice the growth? Because this is my example. Third grade student goes into one of these choice schools and is reading at a first grade level in the fall. So they're reading at a first grade level, and through this 7 or 8 or 9 month process, they're now reading at a 2.5 level. Well, they've certainly grown, but they still are not at grade level. And I think that is a real problem unless we do a pre and post test to show growth, to show, I mean, it's a bonus for parents, it's a bonus for kids, and it's a bonus for the board to see that there is actual growth, because this kid is caught in the middle and not at 90% or grade level equivalency, but yet they've grown a year and a half in 6 months.
Right. And so you're exactly right. That is going to have to happen, and it has to be done with a nationally normed assessment. It's not okay for a teacher-made assessment to determine what point they're at starting coming into the school year and what point they're at the end of the school year. It has to be a reliable and valid measure of growth. So,
And-
so they're all going to have to do that because it's mandated in the law.
Well, I think every kid in every school should have that opportunity for pre-test and post-test.
Right. The law also asks, though, for that proficiency, which means an end of year summative. So when we're developing this policy in phase 4, a lot of it is going to be around the assessments and we're going to have to define, in order to rely on these numbers as an authorizer, it will be incumbent on us to define when they're giving these assessments, what the conditions are like in the school at the time of giving the assessments, who is administering the assessments, what's the turnaround rate going to be for information. Like, all of that is going to have to be outlined, because if we leave it to the schools to do it however they want, we won't know that those scores are valid.
Right.
It's the only way that, so we have to know that the environment, that they were taken in an environment that the assessment approves of. And again, all of that is outlined. One of the additional things I was thinking we could put in here, and I don't remember the changes here, but when we build out policy for the application, if they are going to choose an assessment that is not a pre-approved one, that we ask them to actually turn in all the technical information for that assessment with their application, so we don't have to go fishing for it, and put us in contact with a person at the publishing company. So again, we don't have to search that out. It will save us time. We can read through that technical information, call that person, and then the subcommittee for the approval of the applications can discuss it with the commission to decide if they're okay.
I think that's good.
Yeah, agreed.
But again, putting the onus on the applicant rather than the commission at this point. But that's up to us to make sure that these pre-approved ones, if we decide to do that, are really good choices for them. So we're going to have to learn a bit about assessment.
Yeah.
I like it.
I also want to point out that the exceeding standards, there will be schools that are going to be top performing schools, and they're going to see the opposite of what Dee just described. So what they're going to see is that their proficiency numbers are like excellent and unbelievably impressive, but they won't have much growth because they're already all over that 90th percentile rank. So we're going to see that opposite. So we're, again, when we go in phase 3 and start deciding on how we're going to evaluate metrics, and again, we're only doing the application process right now. We're not talking about renewal. That will have to be like next year, 2025. Those are those kinds of discussions, because it will be at the renewal time that we're making decisions based on what we see over 4 years of data of proficiency and growth for each individual school. So, because they'll be turning in annual reports as required by law. And so we'll have an eye on what's going on in each school at minimum annually, and to see if we need to step in with an intervention or something or make suggestions for them. That's why they're turning in annual reports. But the decision to renew that charter will happen in year 5. So we'll have 4 years of data.
And Trish, will those be listed on the OPAI website as every other public school is?
We could ask for that when the time comes. My guess, it all kind of depends on how OPI wants to handle this information. But if nothing else, we're going to have it on the Board of Public Education website under Choice Schools, because
Right.
It's in the law that annual report has to be submitted to the Board of Public Education, well, to the Commission, the Board of Public Education, the Education Interim Committee, and the public. So yes, we will absolutely make sure that those numbers are available. Okay, so I'm gonna just kick a hornet's nest. Just want to make sure that we're saying it publicly and we're being transparent with all of this, that when we're looking at the meeting standards, again, these numbers are placeholders. Each assessment is going to be different, but on a regular percentile standard scale, 50 is considered average. And there's a standard error of measurement and a standard deviation that goes with that. So usually though, anything as low as 30 percentile rank is average, because that's the standard deviation on that side, as well as up to 70 or 75 on the other side. Okay, so again, that whole range is considered average. And so depending on the assessment, we're going to have to decide what these cut marks are for exceeding standards, meeting standards, approaching standards, and does not meet standards. And that is another, like, literally scientific process. It's like we cannot just arbitrarily pick numbers like we're looking at here. This is not going to be an arbitrary process. We're going to make those cut scores based on data, going through a process of educating judges who will decide then as a group what these cut scores should be. All the other states who have looked at these are like, whoa, those are high. And they're like, you are definitely going to see exceeding standards. There will be schools that do that. But the other thing that came up in the steering committee is we probably want to add an additional performance framework here for alternative schools that are purposely designed, because we are eager to see these applications for students that are right now underperforming in their schools, and to close those achievement gaps. So again, what we're going to be looking at is hopefully schools that are addressing those needs. And so they have a lot of students coming in who are underperforming proficiency wise, but like Dee pointed out, who are hopefully making growth. So how are we not going to, like when it comes to renewal, we're going to be in a position of saying, well, the proficiency is not there. But look, these kids have been growing from year to year. And if we give them more time, maybe they will. But again, we can't just vote with our hearts. We're going to have to vote based on metrics that are defined, that we're comfortable with. We can always argue, deliberate, which we will do. But this is going to be the most difficult part of being on the commission, is deciding about how to make those judgments.
So with that in mind, I have a question. The next section is about achievement gap and subgroups of students. So free reduced lunch, different minority groups, and we just have meets and does not meet under proficiency. And I think that's going to be a big challenge. I like the growth section. I think that's more realistic, but just having the proficiency of either they're at the school's proficiency rate or below. While I love the high expectations of that, I think it's going to take time. So like, is there weighting more like I guess I don't see this, but how would that, if a renewal comes to us and none of the achievement subgroups have met proficiency, but they're making great growth, how is that taken into consideration?
So this is what we're doing in phase 3, right? We're going to make those metrics. So again, all of this will add up to something. Meeting will, let's just say, will be a 1, and does not meet would be a 0 in this particular column, but it still might all add up.
Right.
To say we can still renew this contract. And that's the reality. That's what other states are experiencing all the time. And they often say that the quality of the authorizer is an authorizer that's fair and consistent with their metrics. And that's kind of the best you can do, because there is no crystal ball. I mean,
Right.
The Fordham Institute just did a whole study of like, oh, based on these applications and all these things that you're looking at when you're vetting these schools, do those applications actually predict the results of the schools? And the bottom line is no. Doesn't matter if the application's insufficient or sufficient or this or that. It's like, there are just too many moving factors in running the school to have that crystal ball. So the best you can do is being consistent and fair and transparent.
Makes sense?
But it's hard. So Kathy, going back to what you were saying about the binary decision in this case for the proficiency and or the growth, were you suggesting that we introduce a larger scale here, or do you think the binary yes or no? Like some of the subgroups do, or 2/3 of them, like, you know what I mean? Like, do you want to extend that, or let's just see the binary on this one?
I think the binary on the overall proficiency rating is going to be very challenging to meet. I like the growth, right? And even that, comparing to the school's overall math growth rate, I guess, the way I've done it in the past, and I've worked with the NWEA MAP assessments, is they measure growth by quartile. So students moving from the lowest quartile have a way more aggressive growth rate than the students maybe moving from the third quartile, or the third quartile to the fourth.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, so but I think maybe as we get into conversations with each of these assessment providers, that might be a factor in our deciding on which ones we choose, is how customized are their growth goals and growth measures. Because
Right.
I know I've worked with all of the subgroups through the No Child Left Behind era, which, that was the whole focus of it, was taking students from minority subgroups and getting them to equal proficiency. And it's really hard. And that is the point of our work, right? Is to find a different way so that we can help all students learn. But I do think maybe more measures in there might be more realistic.
Right. And again, we're considering it kind of also depends on the school they're proposing. So like, for example, if they're saying we're going to open with K through 2, they're going to be able to address this better. You know what I mean? Than if we're opening K through 5 and they're dealing makeup on all these kids. One thing I'm thinking is that in doing the metrics, that we could weigh one of these metrics more than the other. Like we could weigh that growth. More again, but that's hard on the schools who are high performing schools. So we have to make sure that, again, we're not just doing this arbitrarily, but rather, dealing with the specifics of the assessment and the best scientific information that we can get about that.
Yeah. And like I say, like NWEA has that accounted for. So, a student at the 75th percentile, might need to grow 5%. If they met that target, boom, it's checked, right? So that's the same as someone moving from the 13th to the 33rd percentile. Like, boom, they both met their metrics. So that would be an equally weighted way of looking at that.
Right.
But that's going to be assessment by assessment again. So conversations for the future.
All right, good. What's on here? Okay, any comments about the operational measures? And again, those are just binary too. It's like you have to meet all these requirements, or is it like yay or nay, 1 or 0? Oh, I didn't add ones there. I should put ones on there.
I just wondered under board governance, governance oversight rubric, if we should add any kind of training for the board under there, under meet standards. So initial and maybe, you know, once a year training, or any onboarding of new members. They participate in board training specific to community choice schools.
Right. Again, we don't want to add what's not in statute. We've got to be mindful of that for sure.
Yep.
Here, hang on, I'm trying to pull it up. Okay. I don't know that there's anything specifically in that. What do you guys think? Oh, here we go. Hang on. There's a reference to authorizer training, which is interesting. That's if they're an authorizer though. Okay, so it would be in the section 9 probably. And or the autonomy. Okay, so I don't see anything here. Here we go. Okay, so I think that that would come up in when they're turning in their bylaws and seeing, so again, we get to evaluate their bylaws. That's just not like a binary thing. They're turning them in or they're not turning them in. We may find that their bylaws are insufficient. Okay, because it's lacking some very clear stuff that we would like to see. And again, we could also build out policy, like model policy of board organizational health and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But I think we need to be careful about putting it in contract form if it's additional to the law.
That makes good sense. Yeah.
Because everything that's in here, like looking at these bullet points, let's see. The board needs to monitor academic performance. The board reviews financial reports. The board maintains compliant policy. The board engages in strategic planning. Board conducts an annual evaluation. Board conducts an annual evaluation of its management organization. It monitors compliance with its contract. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think if it's not in the law.
And I will quadruple check that. All right, what about the financial measures? Just want to make sure that they make sense to everyone in general. And I think actually as authorizers, we're probably going to have to do some training in this stuff over time too, so that we can understand exactly. And again, assuming there's a director at some point, that person too will be expert in understanding these numbers. They think they're fairly well defined here.
I agree.
If I can understand them, most people can. All right. John and Mark, I wanted to ask you guys specifically, and Dee, as private business owners, what do you guys think about the rubric in rating the health? Like, do you think that this is protective enough of state dollars while also being reasonable for a small business to be able to meet these numbers?
Could McCall put those up, please?
Oh, sure. So we're on page 10 is the first one, near-term health. So we're looking at the calculation being the current ratio, which is the current assessments divided by the current liabilities. And we're looking for a ratio for meeting the standards that is at least 1.1 or between 1.0 and 1.1 in doing that math.
Well, generally, don't they, the schools, would they get money twice a year or once a year?
10 times.
Oh, so they get it each month.
Yeah. Plus any donations that they bring in and or any grants they may apply for and get. So that would be included in here too.
Yeah, you would think that from a standpoint of operation, if they're getting it every month, that they should be able to, that seems like a reasonable expectation.
Right. And again, well, they will be operating on the fiscal year that matches what our traditional schools do here. So July 1 through June 30th. And so all the reporting and everything would be done during, that fourth quarter at the end. They might wait. I don't know. I shouldn't say what I don't know, but it would be for all 4 quarters.
Trish, is that something that Epicenter will be a part of?
Yeah, I believe so, because again, if the authorizer is using Epicenter, then they would open it up to the schools in their portfolio. So they would have access to software to support these kinds of calculations.
All right.
And then also turning it in.
Yes.
And if you go to you don't have to go there, I'm just going to tell you, but on the document at the very, very beginning that we were talking about that I said is an ongoing document, which is called the Annual Calendar of Reporting Requirements. They are required 3 times throughout the year to turn in this financial health check. And then the 4th reporting would be the annual report.
And
So if there are any red flags, it gives the authorizer an opportunity to check in with that school before things go bad.
I guess that there would be some question whether they owned a building or rented a building or got a building for free. There might be some flexibility in that as far as how much, because if they're paying for the repairs and maintenance on a building, it might be a little bit more difficult, but I think to start with, it's a place to start.
Okay, good.
I think it's a pretty good measure. I think it'll be interesting to see the data as time goes on. I mean, I would suspect that, in some of those quarterly reports, you're going to see that, they're going to hit that approach of standard or does not meet standard. And that's going to have to take some looking into, why is that happening? I know in a lot of banking or lending, I know the standard is 1.2. So, I mean, I think the standard is lax enough, but I would be curious to see how that operates over the year for each school, depending on, what their demands would be.
And I like the idea that it is not just a one-time report, because I think people can adjust some things on a quarterly basis to realize that, hey, we have to get in more donations. We have to cut the expenses here in order to meet this supply. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Definitely.
Krish, one thing I'm hearing from you guys is that context to a lot of these areas is going to be really important, and it might make sense after each of these sections, academic, organizational, governance, or organizational and financial, that there's an opportunity to provide some context. because that might sort of give you a little bit more information to why their scores may not be at a place maybe you were expecting. So, and that could happen in the financial summary, but once you get into that academic side, that might make sense there too. So just thinking through, I don't know if Epicenter allows you to build it that way, but that to me would make a lot of sense.
Right. Good point.
I actually think that that programming in Epicenter could do that for us quite easily.
I think you're right. And again, that's another thing we'll, of course, dig into deeper over time as it becomes necessary. Okay. I'm just pausing to see if there's anything else that might come up in the performance frameworks. What about this pre-approved national normed assessment? I sort of was saying that what the idea of this, kind of pre-approving these, but I would like to ask you guys what your thoughts are on this. Especially you, John, because I feel that you have a really good alarm system for this is too much, or this is too, you know what I mean? Like this is too limiting for people, or this, I want to make, what do you think about this idea of us previewing 3 solid assessments and then making them a pre-approved list that they can choose from, but they don't have to?
Well, certainly I feel I agree that if you can make it easier for them to go, well, we want to fill out this application, they've got a pre-approved there.
Mm-hmm.
And, we can just pick that one and we know that simplifies our process at that point in time. I guess it would depend. There's always the possibility you're going to get a new group of applicants that have not ran a public charter school or a community choice school. So they're going to look at this and go, well, what can I do to simplify my rating, my part of running this school? So it would seem to me that would be good to have 2 or 3 options for them to pick. And of course, yeah, they could pick somebody else, but it's just going to complicate and slow the process down.
Okay.
I think anything we could do to simplify the whole process from an application standpoint is, granted, we don't want to have carbon copy schools out there. We want our choice schools, but there are things that we can make easy without dictating what they're going to teach or how they're going to teach it.
Right. Okay, good. That was the intent. Okay. So, anything else? Okay, I'm going to make the motion this time and say that I move that the commission adopt the performance framework drafts and continue to work on refining the specific details in preparation for the eventual use. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, it has been moved and seconded that the commission adopt the performance framework draft and continue to work on refining the specific details in preparation for eventual use. Is there any discussion? Is there
Public
any
comment?
Please. Public comment? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that the commission adopt the performance framework draft and continue to work on refining the specific details in preparation for eventual use. All those in favor say aye.
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 And all those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion has been approved. Fantastic. Okay, so item number 5 is a discussion about our next steps. So, hang on, I'm just organizing my documents here real quick. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to have to do next is we're going to have to plan our next 2 meetings. Our bylaws say we need to meet at least once a quarter. We are well above that at this point with what we've done. but that means we will need to have one in the fall and in the winter, basically, of 2024. So I'm thinking that with the next phase that we're going into, authorizing authorizers, that if we plan a meeting towards the end of September, that puts us within the third quarter. And then if we do our fourth meeting at some point, you know, I know it's hard with the holidays, but actually, McCall, do you guys do a December meeting?
We don't. We're every other month beginning in January.
Got it. Okay, so you have one in November. So so
Correct.
looking at something late November, that's not Thanksgiving, of course, and then, or we can go into December should we need to, in order to meet the requirements. So I wanted to ask if you guys were all comfortable with me sending around a doodle poll, where with some proposed dates, and we can just find the one that works best for all of us, so we don't have like 1,000 emails going back and forth and stuff.
Trish, would these be Zoom meetings or would they be in-person meetings?
I was planning on the webinars, and again, just thinking about our budget and the bottom line that I'm proposing webinars. What do you guys?
Okay. Yeah, I want to know that if we're going to do,
Right.
yeah.
I
Thank you.
think as the fundraising subcommittee starts, if they are successful in getting some grants and we have a higher budget, that it would, and assuming the law prevails out of the lawsuit, I do think it would be better to meet in person like at least twice a year or something like that, just so that we have a presence and we can choose where we do that. It doesn't always have to be in Helena. You know, we can find places to host us. I mean, we can do all kinds of things, but travel expenses will be involved with all of that, and we can discuss it as it comes available. But so far I haven't gotten any complaints from anybody, and McCall, tell me if you have, that we're not like publicizing our webinars well enough that people feel that they're isolated from it. Like, I think we're giving good access in these webinars in general. Have you heard anything negative, McCall?
I've not gotten any feedback, no.
Okay, and OPI is helping us too by distributing, you know, when we're having these meetings and stuff, to their list also. So we've got the BPE and the OPI, plus it's posted on the webpage, you know, and all of that. So I think we're good. I just think it's more efficient, and it just is a better use of our time at this point. Okay, so I'll go ahead and send around a doodle poll, and we'll all just put in there. Are there any time periods within, you know, September that you guys know right now I should avoid, and or December?
If I may, with some sort of state meetings, Board of Public Ed is going to be meeting the 12th and 13th in Livingston. So I think that also probably knocks off the 11th.
Okay,
And then the following week are some interim committees that are scheduled. So Education Interim Committee is scheduled for Monday. Tuesday is scheduled for that joint with the interim budget. And then Wednesday is interim budget.
and that is the week of September 9th?
Oh, sorry, 16th, 17th, 18th.
Oh, right. Okay, so 9-16 through 18. Okay, so looking to avoid those. Thank you.
11th through the 18th, if you could.
September is fine with me, but December, I have December 6th, teacher retirement meeting, board meeting.
Okay, got it. So you'll be traveling for that. Yeah. Okay, so Thanksgiving's going to be on the 28th, and then. Okay. And again, kind of depending on where we are, we could always have a really quick meeting if we need to. You know, there's no reason why we can't do that. There's always something to do, but we certainly don't have to do a ton each time. Okay, so no on 12/6. Okay, great. Another question I wanted to ask you guys is the agenda packet. So this one was like 50-something pages, and would you guys prefer, as, you know, commission members, that in addition to sending that PDF that we send out, that I print these up and send them to you as they're getting lengthier? Would that be appreciated?
Yes.
John, what do you think?
Oh, I think you should print multiple copies for each one of us. And you should bind them all in binders and send them.
That's not happening.
I personally like the
BPP
digital.
gave us a nice printer that has not been used yet. So we do have a good laser printer to do this work, and it would just be a matter of postage in addition to that, which I think works for our budget if you guys are okay with that. But because like some people like working on the computer, I like things to be printed because I like to take hand notes. So everyone's different. So if you want that, I know Kathy, you do, you're good with that.
Yeah.
I like print too.
When we're on Zoom, you've got to have multiple tabs open in that. So if we're doing it via Zoom, it's nice to have it printed.
Okay, John?
No, I'm good. I like to use comments in my PDFs, so.
Ooh, I'm so jealous. That's good. I'm just not good at that. What about you, Mark? Are you a computer guy or?
Yeah, I've been following along electronically. It's better for
Okay. Perfect. Okay, and then I'll ask the others to find out. Okay, got it.
You don't want to have to buy us a file cabinet for each one of them.
That's true. That's true. All righty.
We want to be green. We want to be environmental, so. But I could go either way, but I have learned to be digital so that, but if you're traveling, certainly I can understand with Dee and Kathy that, it works better. Whichever.
Right. At some point I want to get good with an iPad, and I'm like, okay, just use that for these kinds of things. It'd be good, but not there yet. Okay, great. So I want to check in about that. All right. So after today's meeting, we're moving on to authorizing authorizers, and we're basically going to go through this whole process. So the policy making subcommittee is going to have a lot of work. So that's going to be stage 2. And then simultaneously, we'll kind of be dipping into that development of the metrics and the internal policies as they come up. There's like a list that I'm developing as we go on. So that's where we're going next. And are there any final comments that anyone has?
I just, would McCall be able to send us the documents with the redlining? So that, because I would like to report to OPI.
Right.
That, because I'll report about the meeting today, and then if I had the documents redlined up, then I could just forward that with them.
Yeah, in electronic form.
Yeah.
Yeah. That works. And so I'm glad you brought that up because if you could send those to me too, McCall, that would be great. And then I will do the final edits from that and put it in the Teams folder that we've been sharing. So that, and I promise to put them in there this time.
No worries.
So
Yes, I'll send them back to you guys as a Word doc. And obviously you saw the red line. And then just keeping in mind that those will be draft, and then Trish will clean those up and save them so that we have them locally for the both of us to access if you need them again.
Okay. Thank you. That sounds great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Anyone else? All right, so I would like to take just one more moment to thank everyone for their participation today in the meeting, and especially to the BPE staff, McCall and Chris, for providing excellent support. To our guests, actually, I need to take public comment one last time. So would our attendee like to make public comment? No, we're good. All right. So just again, thank you all for taking time to participate in the work of the commission, and to the commission members for your service to the state is appreciated. And we will be in contact soon. And meeting. Oh, do I need to take a motion? It's been a while. Is there a motion to adjourn? Anyone?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Done. Okay.
Second.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.